நிலமடந்த கெழிலொழுகும் சீராரும் வதனமென திகழ் பரத கண்டமிதில் தெக்கணமும் அதில் சிறந்த திராவிடன திருநாடும் தக்க சிறு பிறை நுதலும் தரித்தனரும் திலகமுமே அத்திலக வாசனை போல் அனைத்துலகும் இன்பமுற எத்திசையும் புகழ் மணக்க இருந்த பெரும் தமிழழங்கே தமிழனங்கே உன் சீரிலமை திறம் வியந்து செயல் மறந்து வாழ்த்ததுமே வாழ்த்ததுமே வாழ்த்ததுமே.
With the blessings of our Secretary Madam, our beloved Archie, it's a great pleasure and privilege for me to welcome you all to this reflection on Alagappa, a beautiful mind, a saga of perseverance, compassion, and sacrifice. May I take this opportunity to extend all of you a warm greetings and special thanks are due to you for gathering here to contribute to this event. I would like to personally welcome our Chairman, Sir, Mr. Ramanathan Vairavan, who has made this event a great by his blissful presence. Today, he is amongst us to share his views about his book on his grandfather a legend, Dr. Alagappa Chettiar, our founder of Alagappa institutions. In that book, he has insisted that it was his grandfather's dream to bring revolution in India through education.
Distinguished guests, friends, students, faculty, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a pleasure for me to be here in front of you to address this gathering, to state why I just completed this biography of my grandfather, Dr. Alagappa Chettiar. The title of this book, which you will get to see, is Alagappa, A Beautiful Mind. A saga of perseverance, compassion, and sacrifice. Why a beautiful mind? While writing this book, I had various thoughts. How do you try to get a title that can represent him? There were many reasons as to why I chose. First thing is, Alagu means beauty. So beauty had to be part of the title. The next thing is, he converted the rough terrains of a jungle out here into an orchard of education. That was something that is not possible by everyone, but he did that. He loved students. He always spent time with students and children, watching the joy in his face when he saw children playing. That was what made him happy. He gave his home away to build a women's college. Today in life, people study, go to work, try to buy a house, buy a car, buy a bigger house, buy a bigger car, and try to enjoy all luxuries of life. But when you give away that house and you say, all I need is a bed, that shows sacrifice. And that shows that this person had a beautiful mind. And that was the reason we chose Beautiful Mind. And of course, with looking at books published, there is a book called The Beautiful Mind about Nobel Prize laureate John Nash from Princeton University. And so there was a conflict. How can I get another title with Beautiful Mind, and then changed it to Alagappa, A Beautiful Mind, and that solved the problem. But it was not just the beautiful mind, it was a story, a saga of compassion, a saga of perseverance, a saga of sacrifice. And that's what I wanted to capture, and that's a subtitle of this book. Today, in the heartland of Chettinad, if you walk around, and especially for me, if I go around and introduce myself as the grandson of Alagappa Chettiar, they said, oh, Bharatla Perana, or, that is common news. And for a person who died 50 years ago, for people to say about Bharatla, I mean, there are lots of students who have gone to the UK, did their barrister at law, but nobody remembers them as a barrister at law. You have to say your name and say barrister at law. Here, just Bharat law or just Vallal automatically refers to him and no one else. There are many Vallals, many people who have given lots of money and done various things. But this direct connotation is indeed wonderful, and this can happen only for a person who has given his life to society, and that's what he has done. The writing of this biography of my grandfather was something that I took upon almost 7, 8 years ago. I read books. I mean, there are many books. I was just speaking to Professor Ramanathan. He was saying there are many books written, There have been people talking about their experience. In fact, T.V.S. Manian, who was his assistant, wrote about speeches. Some people wrote about whatever they knew about his vision in education, his philanthropy. But nobody put everything together and wrote a biography. And it was very challenging for me because he's not alive, none of his friends are alive, none of the peers are alive. So it is what information you can gather. And you want to be as factual as possible. So this was the biggest challenge in trying to get information on him. So I had commissioned historian S. Muthaiya almost about 7-8 years ago and said, I want you to write a book, a biography of my grandfather. And he said, okay, it's going to be difficult, but we will go to the archives of Delhi, Calcutta, Bombay, Madras, and try to see what we can get from newspapers. So he did his research, and 2 years later came up with a book, which I did not find appealing at all. Because the reason for this book, Alagappa, A Beautiful Mind, is not to have a book and say, I wrote a book. It is to inspire people. I want each one of you to get a copy of this, read it, and get inspired, because here is the life and times of a person who died when he was 48, who accomplished so many things during his lifetime and excelled in every single thing. And that is, you should read. And he did all this with suffering. Today, you have fever and you don't want to go to work. You have surgery and you don't want to go to work. Here, he's having a broken back, he's broken his leg, he's out here trying to go to the inauguration of a building. Because for him, life was all about achieving his mission, his goals. He had set those goals very clearly, and he was marching towards it no matter who said what or what God was planning to do with him. His course was, I'm going to achieve that goal. So here is a person who, as a student, who studied in Karaikudi, excelled in school, and then he wanted to go to college. But his father was asking him to come to Malaysia to go learn the Chitya way of money lending business, and he didn't want to do it. And but Providence had it that on the ship on the way to Malaya, the captain thought he was having fever, typhoid, and got him off the ship. And that was his chance. That is how history turned. So he ended up going to convincing his father through his uncle that he should study. And so he was late for college. He wanted to get into Presidency College. He applied. Now, he goes to see the principal. Principal says, class is full. There are 40 seats. 1 to 40, absolutely no space. I'm sorry. But he wants to get the seat. So he goes and sees the principal and said, sir, and the principal says, you have good marks, but I don't have a seat for you because here's a roster, 1 to 40. And then he looks and he says, sir, 0 is available. And that was the presence of mind that he had, the perseverance to achieve his goals. The principal was so impressed with his presence of mind, he gave him admission. So that was the start. So he got into Presidency College, and instead of spending time like many of us do, going to movies, going to the beach, spending time with family, he ended up forming the Triplican Debating Club with S.Y. Krishnasamy and other people. And every evening, they used to sit and discuss topics of relevance in world economics, on government policies. And this was every evening after college, sitting around and learning how to speak. His diction, his command of English. When he spoke, and he had 2 personal Ramachandra Rao and Padmanabhan, 2 people, he would be dictating. And when he dictated on two different subjects, one on his business, another one on education, he would not have one correction in that dictation. It was final. So such was the power of his language. He was eloquent, he could deliver it at any time on any subject. Whether it was Tamil literature, whether it was economics, whether it was insurance, whether it was banking, whether it was transportation, anything, he always was well informed and he could deliver. He was a businessman when he came back from the UK. He first wanted to become an Indian civil servant. That is why he went. That was everybody wanted to become an Indian civil servant, then you'll get a position in the government. And he went to London to study, and he studied, and he went for his medical. He passed the exam for the ICS, but he failed the physical. He had leprosy. Leprosy is a bacteria that comes from M. leprae, which is similar to the mycobacterium found in tuberculosis. And it takes about 3 years to manifest itself. That means it slowly starts in all the soft tissues, in the eyes, in the skin, in the lips. And he contacted somebody here, whether it was somebody in the public, some servant, somewhere he contacted it. And when he surfaced, it was in England, when he was in the prime of his life, he contacted, so that caused, it took 3 years for it to incubate, and when it showed up, his face was distorted. Today, if you have pimples on your face, you're shy, you're covering, putting makeup and all this. And here was a young, dashing man, very ambitious, very aggressive person, and his whole face, eyes, nose, everything started getting distorted. And you go and do a search on leprosy in Google, and you will see how distorted a person's face can get. And that did not stop him. So that was God's way of his bad karma in his previous life. So he moved on, came back to India. I mean, at that time he went and got his barrister at law in England, and then he came back to India, and he capitalized on that Triplicane Debating Club, the network of people that he utilized. So you students, during this time, you should network and find people, whether these are professors, whether they are your family friends, people who can help you later in life when you need them. So S.Y. Krishnasamy was one of those, and some governors that he had contacted, and he started a textile mill in Kerala, in Kannur. And the moment he started, business was booming. He made crores of rupees and a couple of thousand spindles, and it was a very successful business. From that, he went into speculating in tin. Burma, went to tin mines in Burma, rubber estates in Malaysia. Then he went into coffee estates in Coorg, real estate in Bombay, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, insurance, banking, transportation, entertainment, every possible sector where one could get into, because he was so sure of himself. And today, as a writer from the Business Standard, Siddhartha, he wrote Indian business tycoons over the millennium, and he said, Sir Alagappa, he was knighted by the British government when he was 37 years old, because he was did very well in business. He said, Sir Alagappa was the uncrowned business Maharaja of the South in the 30s. And that was his business ventures. Then India gained independence. And when India gained independence, Nehru wanted industrialists to help educate India. And that's when he got into meeting Dr. Lakshman Samudaliyar, who later became his mentor. Educational ventures. And at this time, it was one institution after the other. And it was with the Arts College, and then came the Engineering College, then came Polytechnic, and a series of college, one after the other. His goal was, if a child came into his campus when they were young, 2, 3 years old, they should graduate from the campus and be ready to get a job or even get the job. So with Polytechnic, with physical training, with all these vocational capabilities later, this was the complete campus, and that's what he wanted. And it was always something that any task that he undertook, he wanted to do it right, and it was with perfection. And that was the way he undertook the marriage of his daughter, my mother, Mrs. Umayal Ramnathan, who unfortunately is not able to join us today because she is not well and she's in Chennai. So with the wedding, and I do not want to go into the details, it's all very well captured in the book, but as Kalki and the magazine Kalki and Hindu wrote, thousands of people. The Hindu said 20,000 people, and Kalki wrote hundreds and thousands of people attended the wedding. And there were dowries in multiple bungalows on display. And he challenged anybody who could find one piece of dowry that was missing for my mother to set up a house, that he will make that stuff in gold and give it to them. And nobody ever was able to take up that challenge. The beauty of this is, during that wedding, which was a 9-day wedding, there were 4 days of entertainment. And as to how he did it, he invited 27 artists in the likes of Tyagaraja Bhagavathar, M.S. Subbalakshmi, M.L. Vasantakumari, Padmini, Ragini, Lalita, and then Arundale, and then Bhanumati, and all these the stars in their own rights. He got them all in Kottayur, and in a methodical fashion, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, they performed before the people. And as to, this will go down in the Guinness World Book of Records as you could never stage such an event today unless it's a festival organized by some other group, not for a private function. But he did this. Once again, it demonstrates the reason why he did it is anything he did that passionately. He never did it, oh, I have to just get the work done. So for you students, whatever you do, be passionate about it. Once you're passionate about it, you're bound to succeed. And so, when I'm saying, when you read these books, when you say, oh, he did this, he didn't do it because he was wealthy. First thing is, he earned a lot of money, and then he spent it. And many times, there was a stage when, in summarizing the wedding, I have to get a quotation, so I have to read it. Alagappa Chettiar said, "Mine is a one-man business. I have to rely on a large number of men, some good, some indifferent, and some bad. The good men have no initiative, so they wouldn't get the work done. The indifferent men tend to steal without working, but the bad men work and get the job done, and they steal." And he says, when the stealing passes into a wholesale robbery, they manage to leave me. But for me, I want to get things done. And so he used people as they were available. And as to how many crores of rupees got lost because nobody accounted it for and somebody took it away, no one knows. But for him, his objective was get the job done, and that's what he did. A relative of his, which is my uncle, Aram Nachippan, once said, in London, Dr. Chitya got up in an audience and said, I'm going to build an engineering college in Karikudi. And after the speech, his nephew asked him, how are you going to build? You don't have any money, you don't have anything. How can you just get up and say something? And he said, if you believe in God, if you have a faith in God and determination, you can do it. I'm going to do it. And you will see that it will be done. And that was what he did. For anything he did, he said, I'm going to do it, whether he had money or not. He found the money, to get the job done. And that was his willpower. So the beauty of this book is, there are so many, if you look at the Alagappa institutions, my mother, she was unable to manage the schools. Even when my grandfather was alive, it got to a stage that the schools could not, the colleges could not be managed because there was no tuition fees coming from students to offset the expenses in buildings, to pay for faculty, to give them housing and others. So without any business, because he had not focused on his business, he had to look at whatever assets he had and use it towards the trust. So when he passed away, the trust did not know how to manage the institutions because you needed a visionary and nobody could exactly fit into his shoes. So the trustees decided to give away some of the institutions to the engineering college, the polytechnic, the arts and science, and then eventually my mother gave the 450 acres to Tamil Nadu government to form the Alagappa University. All this are institutions that were founded by Dr. Alagappa Chitya. But still today, unlike Annamalai University, you would say, oh, you came from Annamalai University, or you came from Velammal or something. Here we are fractioned. And what we are doing as an initiative is establishing a corporate image, talking about the Alagappa group of educations. And these institutions are run by the government, the rest are run by the trust. Creating a whole new thing, trying to demonstrate that this person, in the time during 1943, 1947 to 57, spent an equivalent of 10 million US dollars in charitable donations. Today, the replacement value of that is about 3 billion US dollars and more. That is phenomenal. And it far exceeds any other institutions. You can take Annamalai University, take any institute, far exceeds that. And that's what he did. And that's the reason for this book, to show what a great man he was. But apart from, it's not that we are proud that he's our grandfather or my children's great-grandfather, but you should have a goal. Should be inspired. If he can do it, I can do it. And all of you are all capable. It's just a question of motivation to get things done. I want to so today there are 3 million graduates or 30 lakh students who have graduated from the Alagappa institutions. That is a tremendous record. And we are extremely proud that he created these institutions to enable such a thing. I want to share with you 2 anecdotes before I pass it on. And the reason why my children are talking about their aspects is to show that he wanted children to use this campus and learn, to offer education so that everybody will benefit. So each one of them will talk about their perspective, how they got motivated and what they're doing. So the incident, what I want to explain to you is, one day I was in Boston with my mother in the US, and we were at the Mahalakshmi temple, and a gentleman walked up and said, Mrs. Umayal Ramanathan, Vanakkam, I am a student of Alagappa College, Engineering College. And she said, oh, and my mother said, yes. He says, if you have 2 minutes, I ask you to I invite you to come over to my house, which is very nearby. So we went over, and there, as soon as we arrived, he took us to his prayer room. And in the prayer room, there were two. One was a Ganesha idol. The other one was a photograph of my grandfather. And he says, I owe everything in my life to him. And this person was a senior vice president of Digital Corporation in Boston, which was a very high-ranked IT company. And so we asked him, what is the story? He said he was from Erode, top-notch students, very poor family. He came first in the school. He applied for engineering college. He applied to Karaikudi, Alagappa, and he applied to Madras. And in Madras, his uncle lived, so he was hoping if he got into Madras, he can stay with his uncle. And in Karaikudi, he was just hoping that he could get into an engineering college. And he got admission in Karaikudi. But he was waiting to get admission in Madras, but he didn't get it. And since he didn't accept the engineering college admission in Karaikudi, the colleges started, and his seat was gone. And so he decided to go to the registrar and plead his case. And the registrar said, sorry, you didn't answer, so seat is gone, college started, I'm sorry, you can leave. So he was very dejected, and he was walking out of the building, and my grandfather was coming the opposite direction. And he said, young man, you have the world ahead of you. You should always walk with your shoulders up high and your head up, because you have the world to conquer. You're walking as though you're going to die tomorrow. And he said, yes, sir, I am going to die tomorrow because my life is gone. So he put his hand around his shoulder, took him to the registrar and said, give him a seat. The registrar gave him a seat. And he eventually got the gold medal from my grandfather. And this was, he said, this changed my life. I owe everything to him. And he said, I don't know what would have happened. But this is just one of the stories. I'm sure there are thousands of stories, because he was always passionate about people. He always wanted to help students. He always was so concerned. So as his grandson, I feel indebted to bring this story out. There are a couple of anecdotes which you will enjoy reading. I wish I could have made it a lot more interesting to talk about many things, but that's not possible. His is a shining example is an exemplary character. He gave it all to society. We are all very proud of him. And this book, The Beautiful Mind, which I hope you will all read, page by page, because each page there's a hidden message. And that message is to inspire you to be successful in life, to inspire you to bring prosperity to your families and make us all happy. So thank you.
Being a medical doctor in the society.
Dear students, teachers, friends, and now new acquaintances, my name is Anita Radhakrishnan. I am the great-granddaughter of Dr. Alagappa Chettiar. I'm the granddaughter of Dr. Umayal Ramanathan, and I am the daughter of Mr. Ramanathan Vairavan. I want to thank you all for being with us today to celebrate the reflections of the book, Alagappa, A Beautiful Mind, that's been written by my father, Mr. Vairavan. I urge all of you in this room to read the book, not only because he wrote it, but because he's really beautifully captured in his writing the saga of compassion, perseverance, and sacrifice that Dr. Alagappa Chettiar portrayed in his life. Alagappa Ayya strongly believed in the emancipation of women through education. At a time when women were not treated equally, he built schools and colleges that were all co-education. He also built a women's only college at the request of women females in the community. He did this by giving away his own residence in Côte d'Ivoire at a time of financial constraints. His daughter, Mrs. Umayal Ramanathan, continued his passion by building this beautiful campus, or the Umayal Ramanathan College for women, for the women in our community. And my father further added to the vision by founding the Alagappa Girls School Academy. I'm here to talk to you about my journey as a young woman in this prestigious family and how I chose the field of medicine. The opportunity of going through a cosmopolitan upbringing, being born in Germany, raised in Singapore, did most of my schooling in the United States, and came to India for medical college. It exposed me to multiple cultures, and it taught me to appreciate the values of life, such as compassion, accountability, integrity, faith, and courage. If there is a singular reason why I chose medicine, it's because of Dr. Alagappa Chettiar. My father, my mentor, kept telling us stories as we grew up about all that he accomplished in just the 48 years that he lived on this earth. He also told us about all of his physical ailments and the physical pain that he braved through the short life that he was here. He had tides of misery, one wave at a time, suffering at first from skin lesions from leprosy that disfigured his face, and later from complications from diabetic neuropathy, giving him difficulty to walk. He also developed bone cancer at a time when there was no treatment in sight. Everything was palliative, and medical treatment had not advanced sufficiently to treat or mitigate his sufferings in the 1950s. So as I grew up, I appreciated his contributions to the welfare of society, and I became passionate about being a doctor to serve people, just like my great-grandfather, with tender, loving medical care. With that clear focus on social service, I was determined to usurp every opportunity that rose to better update myself to become an able physician. It was during my internship during my time in Madras that in the town of Nagapattinam, there was a disastrous tsunami. The death toll was almost 7,500 people. I was doing my internship year then, and we were asked to go and set up medical camp in that town. When we arrived at the scene, the image was absolutely appalling. There was dead bodies everywhere. They were floating. There were infections. There was children on the street with cut open wounds and abscesses. There was a need for rapid medical intervention that was very apparent, and it was our team that did most of the immediate acute health care in that situation. As emotional and as stressful as it was, the tsunami experience allowed me to demonstrate that being a physician made a difference. It was a truly fulfilling moment for myself, and I felt a sense of gratitude to be given that opportunity. I completed medical school here. I got married to my wonderful husband, Mr. Chokalingam, and we went to the United States where I did higher studies. I chose the field of cardiology, that is a specialty in the disease of the heart. And I really chose that all based on one experience. It was a young 28-year-old woman who was pregnant, 24 weeks pregnant, with her second child. She came into our emergency room complaining of chest pain. Being so young and complaining of chest pain that was not very typical for heart disease, she had a full workup of testing that included everything but the heart. The very last test she had was an electrocardiogram, which is just a diagnostic heart test. And I was a doctor that picked that test up to look at it. And when I looked at it, it was screaming a very, very massive heart attack. Now remember, she's only 28 years old. She was my age. I couldn't believe it. I went to her bedside and I told her that she's having a heart attack and she needs to be urgently taken to the operating room to save her life. She cried and she looked at me and she said, "My family's not here. What will I do? Do you think I'll live through the surgery?" And it's my responsibility as her doctor to inform her that with her chances of death were close to 20% through surgery, but the chances of death without surgery was close to 100%. So she went ahead and gave me permission to take her to surgery without one family member in that hospital. But she also gave me the responsibility that if by any chance she does not make it, that I tell her and her family, specifically her husband, that she loves him very much and that she will always be there with him, and that he needs to remarry so that her children have a mother. Those words were hard to hear, but it was that very moment that I realized that this is what I wanted to do. That powerful movement between life and death, that divine moment where her destiny could change in one single second. And all I was thinking was, if there was any way I could make this a happy ending, if I could reunite her with her family and let her be that mother of her children, then I've done somewhat a small work of God's plan. Luckily, our patient, with Almighty on her side, and with the hard work of our team of doctors, survived. She did well. She recovered from surgery, and she gave birth to a baby girl 5 months later. The moral of the story is that heart disease can occur to anyone. It can occur to a man, it can occur to a woman, it can occur to an elder person or to a young person. It can occur to an Indian or an American. It can occur to a Chettiar or a Brahmin. There's no protective factor. A lot of it is genetics. But there is one way that we can reduce our risk, and that really is through education and learning what the risk factors of heart disease are and what we can do to prevent it. Women in the field of medicine are very few and far between. In India, only 5% of women are heart doctors. But if you look through the medical schools, almost 35% of women are in the graduating class of medical school. And now I'll tell you, based on my own experience, I think the reason for that, and the reason women shy away from medicine, is because it's difficult managing our personal life with such a busy working life. We are expected to play so many roles, so many different roles, and do them seamlessly. We're expected to be an excellent and an available doctor 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're expected to be a supportive spouse for our significant other. We are expected to be a loving mother for our children. We're expected to be teachers to medical students, and we're expected to be mentors to the younger generation. This is a lot of shoes to fill for one woman, but if anybody can do it, it's only women who can do it. I'm going to tell you that straightforward. Taking the road less traveled by women creates pride, it creates self-fulfillment, it creates respect and a sense of individualism. I crave that feeling every morning when I drive to work. In the field of medicine, work can become very overwhelming. It's easy to forget your duties And it's difficult sometimes to ensure that happiness. But I'll tell you two elements that I consider very important. The first is family. For family to be happy, we need 100% collaboration of our life partners. They need to be on board. You need to include them in your decision making and allow them to see your career goals and the value that it has on your family and your relationship. I'm proud to say that in spite of all the challenges, the late nights, almost 80 to 100 hours a week, and my intense work schedule, I have two beautiful boys, Surya and Shiva, 4 and 1 years respectively. Seeing them brings me immense happiness every evening when I come home. I spend quality time with them, and those moments make everything I do worth it. Their birth also harmonized my relationship with my husband and has brought prosperity into our lives. The second I would say is mentorship. Doctors often cite mentors as the reason why we choose a specialty. But in medicine, there is a big disadvantage. Because there's a lack of women, there's a lack of mentors. We're very underrepresented in this field. There is a critical need for women physicians to facilitate, to recruit, and to retain our own gender. Seeking a role model early in your career is imperative in making this happen. I always feel the best way to learn is by example. To go to somebody and ask how they did it, ask advice and learn from their passion, learn from their success, learn how they dealt with the different stages in their life and what their work and life balance secret was. You have to learn how they did multitasking and how they stayed efficient. Get their help to create a good career timeline and hold yourself accountable to them. எங்க அப்பத்தாவும் எங்க அப்பாவும் அழகப்பா ஐயாவை ரொம்ப நல்லா தெரிஞ்சு வச்சிருக்காங்க. ஆனா எனக்கு அழகப்பா ஐயாவை சந்திக்க முடியல. ஆனா ஒரு மெடிக்கல் காலேஜ் திறக்கணும்னு அவங்களோட ஆசைன்னு எனக்கு தெரியும். எங்க ஃபேமிலியோட நானும் இங்கே ஒரு அழகப்பா மெடிக்கல் காலேஜ் திறக்க போறோம். ஒரு நர்சிங் காலேஜை திறக்க போறோம். இந்த ரூம்ல நிறைய ஸ்டூடெண்ட்ஸ் இருக்கீங்க. அந்த காலேஜில் நீங்கள் என்ரோல் பண்ணணும். நீங்கள் என்ரோல் பண்ணலாம், உங்கள் சிஸ்டர்ஸ், உங்கள் பிரதர்ஸ், உங்கள் பிள்ளைங்க எல்லாரும் அந்த காலேஜை என்ரோல் பண்ண வைக்கணும். அதுக்கு நீங்கள் ரொம்ப நல்லா படிக்கணும். அப்போ தான் மெடிக்கல் ஸ்கூலுக்கு வர முடியும். மெடிக்கல் ஃபீல்ட் ஒரு பிரமாதமான ஃபீல்டு, ரொம்ப ஒரு ரிவார்டிங் ஃபீல்டு. நீங்கள் தான் நம்ம ஃபேமிலியை ஹெல்ப் பண்ணி Alagappa Medical College in the Indian map வர வைக்கணும். I'm going to end with a quote, a very, very strong quote. It's by Mr. Brigham Young. You educate a man, you educate a man. வர வைக்கணும். I'm going to end with a quote, a very, very strong quote. It's by Mr. Brigham Young. You educate a man, you educate a man. If you educate a woman, you have educated a generation. I think it's a powerful quote that speaks volumes, and I want all of you in this room to remember that only thing when you leave here today. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, students, teachers, faculty, management. It's an absolute pleasure for me to be here on this occasion at the Convocation Center here at Dr. Umayal Ramanathan's Women's College. So my name is Anand Vairavan. I am the great-grandson of Dr. Alagappa. I am the grandson of Dr. Umayal Ramanathan. I'm also the son of our chairman here, Mr. Ramanathan Vairavan. Before I begin my speech, I just wanted to share something with you real quick. So, there's been studies done when someone comes to give a presentation or a speech, how the audience responds. So typically, when a new speaker comes, so I have just come to the podium, all of you are excited. There's a new talker. So for the very first 30 seconds, you will listen to me, you will get excited, but then for the next 5 minutes, your mind will start wondering. You'll start thinking about, oh, what's my mother doing at home? What's going on? Your mind will start wondering. And then when I say, in closing, all of a sudden you'll listen again because it's the ending. But I ask you, here I'm going to speak for about 5 to 7 minutes, and I ask, please, for this 5 to 7 minutes, try to listen the whole time if you can. I have a very important topic that I'm speaking about today, and I would love. So if your mind starts wondering and you start thinking, what am I having for lunch today? Just think back to yourself, maybe I can listen to Anand for just a few more minutes. So just try that in your mind if you can. So when I first heard that it was suggested that I come and speak here today, along with my older sister and my younger sister, I was thrilled. I was very excited because you don't get many opportunities where you have all these young, aspiring students, well-accomplished, respected educators, distinguished guests, where they're all in the audience and they have to listen to you. So you have to listen to me. You can't just get up and walk out, or you can't just close your ears, or you can't listen to music. You have to actually listen to me. So it's a great opportunity for me to share some words with you that I hope that you may take to heart. I will be the first person to tell you I was introduced as an accomplished business person. I am not an accomplished business person. I am a very young man. I am an endeavoring, aspiring to be an accomplished business person. I have an older sister who is a cardiologist. She is very well accomplished. I have a younger sister who is in law school and is going to become a very successful lawyer. I may never be as successful as either of them, but I do have goals. I have objectives. I've been taught well by my father. I've been taught well from reading this biography that I can reach to the next level and I can be successful. So as I speak, just think about me as someone who sat in, majority of students here, I sat in the same seat about 10 to 15 years ago, not here in Karikuri, but in the university I attended. I listened to people come and give me words of advice, and I learned from them and I moved forward. So I ask again that you just think of me as a peer to you, as someone who sat where you are, and not some great accomplished person telling you what you need to do. So as I stand here, you might wonder, who are you exactly? What have you done? And what are you going to tell us today? So I think that's a very valid question. You should know, what have I accomplished? What have I done that allows me to stand here today in front of you and share some words? So I'll tell you what I've done. I graduated from Baylor University. It's a school in the United States, a well-respected university that is really focused in the medicine, the field of medicine. That's what the university is well known for. So when I started my university, I said, okay, I want to be a doctor. You know, everybody when they're growing up, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be, those are the big things that you want to do. So I wanted to be a doctor. And then as I continued in my education, I said, I want to be a professional tennis player. So I moved from being a doctor to be a professional tennis player because in 11th and 12th standard, I was put in school here in India, and I played at the Britannia Amit Raj Tennis Academy. So the tennis academy grooms players to become professional. So for example, in India, all of you know Leander Paez or Mahesh Bhupati. They attended this academy and they became great. So my father enrolled me in this academy, thinking maybe my son also has the potential. So I went to this academy and I played. Unfortunately, I never made it to become a tennis player. So then I continued in my education. As I continued in my education, I ended up getting a degree in neuroscience. Neuroscience is the study of the brain. It sounds very fancy and sounds very advanced, but it was just the basic science courses. And I graduated with a neuroscience degree, but I also started finding a passion for business. There was interest to me in business. And as all of you know, my father is very well accomplished in the business field, and I learned from him, and I thought, this may be an area that I could pursue. So I graduated with a degree in neuroscience and with an interest in business. I moved to San Diego, where my parents live, and I started looking for the one field that fits me perfectly, which is the cross of science and business, and that is the healthcare industry or the biotech area. So I went and interviewed at several jobs in San Diego in that company. One day I got a phone call from Novartis. Novartis, some of you may know and some of you may not know, it is the largest pharmaceutical company in the world. So fate had it, one day they called me and they said, you know, we have an opportunity at Novartis. We would like you to come and lead the launch of a new system. And as much as I wanted to stay in San Diego and I wanted to stay at Autogenomics, this opportunity came up and I went and pursued it. So for the last 4 years, I have been at this company. I began in California and I performed well and then was asked to move to Hong Kong. So today I live in Hong Kong. I have lived in Hong Kong for 1.5 years. My role is the Director of Marketing for the entire Asia Pacific. So that is 16 countries in Asia. So that includes China, Japan, Korea, Philippines, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Indonesia, all the countries. And most importantly, I am also responsible for India. And that's what brings me joy, and that I get to be responsible for that as well. So India is the country, whenever I get an opportunity, any time for business, if I can come over here, I come over here and I try to work here in India. So in the short career that I've had, I've really been able to move up hardest workers of any race or any ethnicity. You go to any company in the US, the people that are working the hardest are the Indians. They work so hard and so effectively and do extremely well. I want to tell you one story that my father told me many years ago, which I share with everybody on my team, and I use it as motivation. So for those of you that have lost your mind, just come back for a minute and just listen to the story, because I think it'll help you. So there was a young businessman, and he was moving up in his career, and one day he got a promotion, and his manager said, "You've been doing an excellent job. I'm going to promote you." And he moved him up to the next part, in the organization. And for the very first job, in the new job, he said, "I want you to write a report, and we are going to go ahead and present this report to the management team." So this young man, he went home and he worked on the report as hard as he could. He was very creative, very innovative, came up with lots of different ideas, and submitted the report to his manager. His boss said, "Thank you, I will look at it and I will tell you at the end of the day." So the day goes by and he's waiting, what is my boss thinking of my report? I hope he thinks it's good. So he calls him in and he says, so he picks up the report in his hand and he says, "Is this the best that you can do?" And this young man, he got nervous. He said, maybe I can do better. So he said, "Sir, give me another chance. Let me take this home. I think I can make it better." So he took the report home. He spent all night working on it, redoing it over and over again. He came in and he submitted it the next morning to his manager. His manager said, "I will look at it and I will tell you at the end of the day." So he waited all day. His manager calls him at the end of the day. He walks into his office. He says, picks up the report in his hand, "Is this the best that you can do?" And he's thinking to himself, maybe I can make it better one more time. So he said, "You know what, sir, give me one more chance." So he goes home, he spends the entire weekend, he tears apart the report from beginning to end, redoes it, does it to the best of his ability, comes in and gives the report to the manager on Monday morning. His manager said, "Let me look at it and I'll tell you at the end of the day." He's thinking to himself, what am I going to do? So his manager calls him in at the end and he picks up the report. "Is this the best you can do?" And he says, "Yes, sir, this is the best report that I can do." His manager then says, "Okay, I will open it and read it." So he didn't even open the report. He never even looked at it. And the moral of the story is, and I say this to my team all the time at the company, is don't submit or turn in something just because you have to turn in something. Turn it in at the absolute best of your ability. Don't waste my time. Don't waste other people's time. Spend as much time as you can and give it to me. Then I will take that forward. And I've used that as a lesson many times in my life when I work on projects. I am one of those people that waits till the very end, but when I wait to the end, I work as hard as I can, I spend all the time that I need, and I submit it to the best of my ability. And in doing that, I have been able to move forward in my career because of my hard work. And I know so many of you here are extremely hard workers. That's just how Indians as students are just extremely hard workers. Again, you may not be born being the smartest person in the world, but if you put in that effort, if you try, you will succeed, I guarantee you. So being here today, I want to just share with you some of my reflections of this book. You know, I had an opportunity to read the book before it was published, when my father had passed it over to us. First of all, as they've already said, I urge you to read the book. It is such a wonderful story of how one man accomplished so much, but yet he only lived to be 48. He only lived to be 48, but he accomplished so much in that short time. I am now already 33, and I just look and I feel embarrassed almost. I've accomplished nothing to what he accomplished in 48 years of his life. It's truly astounding. So, you know, that's the first thing. So I was just awestruck. This is just an amazing story. The story of his life definitely needs to be told. When you read the book, you get very inspired. The word inspiration has been used many times. But then you also laugh. There's a lot of funny moments in the book. And then you also get teary-eyed. As you get to the end of his life and the suffering and the pain he went through, yet how accomplished he was, you will start getting teary-eyed as well. So it's just really a wonderful mix of emotions that it will give you. As my talk is really talking about diversified portfolios. So what I want to talk to you about is his life, his focus as a businessman. He did so much. And as my father outlined to you, he was successful in many things. I think many of you may have heard the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none. What does that mean? It means somebody who can do a little bit of everything, but they're not really good at anything. But Dr. Alagappa Chettiar, my great-grandfather, is what I would like to refer to as a jack of all trades, a master of all trades. Every single thing he did, he excelled in. It was just wonderful what he did. There were many nicknames, and again, my father highlighted some of these, but some nicknames that he had, and I'm just going to read some of them to you. Unsung Business Maharaja of South India, Uncrowned Monarch of the Bombay Stock Exchange, Madras Express, Taller than the tallest man in Bombay, Dr. Sir Alagappa Chettiar. Again, he was crowned by the British government. There was just so many nicknames and so many accomplishments that he had that when you read and you just get inspired. So many different things he did and he was successful. So as we talk about the diversified portfolio, what did he do? And again, there's such a long list, I'm going to read you some of them. He had rubber plantations in Malaysia. He had mines in Burma, textile mills in Kerala, insurance companies in Calcutta, coffee estate, theaters in Madras, stockbroking company, airline business, journalism, real estate, banking, electricity, pharmaceuticals, hotels. There were just so many different things that he was able to accomplish. And as I talk about the hotels, I want to share another story. And the reason I share stories again is when you tell a story, the audience gets excited. They listen. So I'm trying to get you to listen as much as I can. So let me tell you another story about the hotels. And you'll see this in the book. So one day he walked in, him and his team walked into the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Bombay. And they were there for some meetings. And he went up to the desk and he said, you know, I would like to get some rooms. And they looked at him. And they saw, you know, he had scarring on his face, because of the disease that he had. And they immediately judged him. You know, they said, who is this guy walking into this, one of the most famous hotels in the world and asking for some rooms? So they said, no, sir, no, we don't have any rooms for you. And he didn't want to take no for an answer, so him and his team were saying, okay, what can we do? So he walked up and he said, you know what, I'll take the entire floor of rooms. And they said, no, sorry, we don't have any rooms for you. And then, as they were just standing there, a European man, one of the owners of the hotel, came over to him and said, we will never give you a room here. The only way we'll give you a room is if you buy the hotel. And again, this was just because of the way he looked, because of the skin condition he had. And so he said, okay. So his team, they went and found the manager of the hotel, and he bought the hotel. He went and bought the hotel that day. He walked into the hotel the next day, and he went up to that man who said, I will never give you a room, and he said, I am now the owner of the hotel, can I have a room? And so he was given a room, and he could have fired those people. He could have said, get out of here, you don't have a job anymore. But he said, he let the people stay there. And there's a quote that says, to err is human, to forgive is divine. And what he did there just really speaks volumes of the type of person that he was. So what drove him to do all the things that he did? Was it money? Was it how can I get richer? How can I be more accomplished? It wasn't that at all. Every single venture that he went forth in was because there was a need for it. He saw that some people needed this. And that's what really drove him to where we are today, education. The number of universities, the number of schools, all that he really worked to develop was because of the need of people, not for any other reason. So it's really, again, truly inspirational. And as I stand here, the legacy continues. After my great-grandfather, my grandmother, Achi, as all of you lovely know her as, she continued the educational infrastructure. She continued building schools. Here we are today at the Dr. Umayal Ramanathan Women's College, and all of you are sitting here because of what she has done. She has developed a school. And then we have, my father and his portfolio and what he has done. He has, not only has his actual job of healthcare, but he founded 2 companies. He additionally has done a lot of work with the Alagappa institutions. He has gone into foreign exchange. He has done digital archiving. He has done worked even in firefighting. He has done so many different things and so many different ideas that he has pursued because he has learned from my great-grandfather and diversifying portfolios. And this is something this message that I'm conveying to you today is something that they teach at the top universities in the world. They talk about, yes, you may graduate from college. All of you, many of you here sitting in the audience, yes, in a year or tomorrow or a few years, you will leave this college and you will get a job. And that's exactly like me, I got a job. But what are you going to do outside of that job? And you may be just happy having your job and living your life and doing that, and that's fine. But I really implore you to pursue your passion, to look for something more than just your job. Yes, have that maiden venture, continue that. Maybe you need 10 to 15 years to get stable. That's what I did. I graduated in 2005. Here I am in 2015. I have just had, my job. I focused on that. But the motivation I have now in reading this book and preparing for the talk today, and just seeing all these different things that we can do. Maybe 3 or 4 of you are friends and your passion is art. You like to draw, or you like to do music, or you like to do something that really excites you. Come together, start something, do something together and pursue that passion. And again, it shouldn't be about, I want to do it so I can make more money. It should be about going forward with, what excites you, what's your passion, but also what can I do to better, society, better for other people. So I really, ask you to take the calculated risk, really pursue your dreams. Again, like I said, we as Indians are the hardest workers. We can do whatever we put our mind to. So I really ask that you continue to move forward. And you have really some well-respected educators here. Have those relationships with your teachers. Don't just go to them and ask them, is this the right answer? Is this the wrong answer? That's not what they're here for. Some of my mentors in my life have been my teachers that have taught me so much, have given me guidance, have helped me, and I go to them even to today for direction and guidance. So, in closing, so those of you, I'm almost done now. So in closing, there's a quote that says, "Great ability develops and reveals itself increasingly with every new assignment." So and that's exactly what happened to me. Every time I did an assignment or did something and I submitted it, it got received as something well. And because I tried hard, they said, okay, well, you know what, Anand, you did a good job. We want to promote you to the next level. We want you to go to the next level. And I think all of you, as long as you have that focus and determination, you can do extremely well. And if we look at some of the people in the world today, some of the most accomplished, Bill Gates, I think many of you know Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft. His first thing that he did was he founded Microsoft, but he's done so many other things since then. He has so many different ventures that he's pursued. Michael Jordan, I don't know if many of you know Michael Jordan. He is the most famous basketball player in the world. He said, his quote was, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." So if you don't even attempt something, how are you ever going to know if you're going to be successful? You're going to fail if you don't even try. So, at the end of this day, what I want you to take away is, I'm not asking you to go start 10 new companies, or I'm not asking you to go do many things, but just consider, take one thing away. What does diversify your portfolio mean? You're going to have a job, but just think of, is there anything else that I can do outside of my job? Is there anything I can do for the betterment of society? Is there anything that I can do? And think about that and pursue your dreams. And I wish all of you the very best. It's again been an honor for me to be here today, and thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Distinguished guests, Students and ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a great honor for me to be asked to speak here today in front of all of you. I am Devi Alamelu Vairavan, the great-granddaughter of Dr. Alagappa Chettiar, as well as the daughter of Mr. Ramanathan Vairavan. I was born in the United States. I was brought up in Singapore, where my father was stationed, and I returned to the United States to complete my primary school. My parents wanted me to get some education in India, hence I was fortunate to return here for my 7th standard, and I studied in Ooty at St. Hilda's. There, to enroll in the 7th standard, there was a requirement, a language requirement, that you would need to know a 2nd language as well as a 3rd language. So namely, that was Tamil and Hindi, and at that time, I didn't know either. So, I actually came to the Alagappa schools in Chennai, and I had a fortunate opportunity to learn Tamil, to learn how to read and write Tamil in 3 months, as well as Hindi. And I wrote the exam to enter into the 7th standard, and I caught up, and I was able to meet the requirements of a 7th standard student for the 2nd and 3rd language. So during the time of being in Ooty, I had the wonderful opportunity of coming here frequently to Karaikudi. And I just want to tell you personally, Karaikudi is my home, and I love it, and I will return here. Not Chennai, Karaikudi. So, the thing is that during this time, when I would come here to Karaikudi, I would get to hear all the stories, and I would marvel at what my great-grandfather did in building this temple of education here. And each time when I would witness it, I would feel that I should be able to contribute and enhance to this education as well. So around my time of studying, and once I left Ooty, my father had me write a career plan. In that you would say, what do I want to be? What do I want to do with my life? And I would also write an obituary and say, how do I want the world to remember me? And for me, when coming up with that career plan, I had all of my guidance coming from my father. He is my mentor, and he really pushed me and encouraged me to reach for the highest. And so I began to start to lean towards law. I would hear all of the stories. One thing that was clear to me was I knew my sister wanted to be a doctor. I knew my brother was going to go into business. But for me, I thought, no to medicine. I don't know about business. But there was something about law that was very special. And what was so special about it was that I would hear all of the legendary stories of my great-grandfather as a barrister at law. And one thing that really came to me or made me proud was that my great-grandfather joined the Middle Temple in London, and through his hard work, he was admitted in London at their bar, as well as he came here to the Madras High Court and became an honorable advocate. The fact here, though, is that Dr. Alagappa Chettiar was the first Chettiar to be a barrister at law. Now, when hearing the stories about him, what stuck out to me is, why did he choose law? Not simply to say, oh, I studied law, just another subject. It was more about that. He wanted to understand law. He wanted it to be the basis for how to operate a business, how to run schools, how to go about and do anything. Law was that basis for him, and it was a way for him to promote justice and protect the community that he cared so much about. And those ideals transformed me into a go-getter, and I have been pushing the envelope ever since. My family has often remarked that in addition to inheriting my great-grandfather's spirit, I exhibit his unflagging energy. I have been actively involved in extracurricular activities, such as I played tennis, I did classical dancing, I also sing. Initially, my desire to communicate across the cultures expressed itself through performing arts. So, with that, I would like to tell you a little story. In the United States, I entered into a competition in California, and it was called the Superstar Competition. It was a singing contest. And there I became a finalist. One thing, and just to give you a background, this is very similar to Super Singer. And the way it works is there's going to be 3 judges sitting there, and each person will come, sing, and the judges will say something. They'll give some feedback, then people will vote. So, for me, I performed in the finals, and I sang my song, and I waited for the judges to give their comments. One judge stood up and said, "Ma'am, you have said to us that you can sing in 8 languages. You have just now sang for us in English. Can you please sing in another language?" So I am standing on a stage in front of thousands of Americans. There's also cameras going. So what do I sing? ஒரு பொய்யாவது சொல் கண்ணே உன் காதல் நான்தான் என்று அந்த சொல்லில் உயிர் வாழ்வேன். So I sang that song from Jody, and the judge and the crowd, they stood up and they applauded. And the judge there said, "We don't understand what you sang, but it was beautiful." And so for me, what I will always remember about that is when after I sang that song, how many Tamilians were so proud that our music was being represented in a United States competition. And for that, I felt very lucky that I was the one there to help and be a part of it. Now, I never had any formal singing training, but I did have the opportunity to sing in the presence of the famous playback singer, Tirumati Vani Jayaram. And there she provided me with invaluable advice, encouraging me to approach music then beyond just a tune with words. It was about singing with passion and flair, and to reach out to others with the power and beauty of music. But setting music aside, performance provided me great satisfaction, but I still knew I had to decide on a career. And I knew that I had to find a way to make a difference in society. And with so much overwhelming inspiration from my great-grandfather and my father, I finally decided to pursue law. So in order to obtain my law degree, I first went and studied forensic science in California. Forensic science is a field of study which focuses on looking at evidence, usually DNA, hair samples, fingerprinting, blood. You pick it up at a crime scene, and they will run tests, and they can tell you who is guilty and who is not guilty according to the evidence found at the crime scene. So, I, studying that, also enrolled into an internship. And the internship that I took was in a place called the Human Rights Watch Center in Los Angeles, California. And I would just like to share my experience with you there, because that is what really touched me. At the Human Rights Watch Center, they are an organization who reaches out and serves the fairness and justice of individuals who are being punished by the courts. So when I was there, I would go and I would see several, they're called juveniles, young people who have been sentenced to life. So I saw people around 25 years old, 26 years old, and they are now locked up forever. They are in handcuffs and they cannot get out because the court has said they will never get out. Now, part of my job in going to this center was I would wear these headphones and I would listen to the stories of these young people. Now, my duty was to type up the report of what has happened to each person. And what was difficult for me was that when I was there, I would hear about how each of these people were thrown into jail when they were 14 years old, 15 years old, 13, 12. And for them, they will never see the outside again. Now, for each of them, when I would hear their stories, most of them didn't have education. Most of them weren't with they didn't have their entire family. But the biggest thing is that many of them felt something very different after being there for so long. Some of them felt they now turned religious. You know, they think they pray to God all the time because they're locked up in a room. Others feel, why should I live? I have no hope. Others feel, I must request the court. They must find a way to let me out early. I didn't do anything wrong. Now, for me, what was so hard was to see somebody who was younger than me, who has lost the rest of their life because of possibly a mistake in the justice system. When these people fill out a petition and ask the court, they are saying, hey, court, please hear me. You have wrongfully put me in here, and I have proof. But the court's priority is not them. The court has so many other cases, so many other things going on, so they are the last of the priority. But for me, being right there, I wasn't okay with that. And so it was very important that I be there to make sure that things like this don't continue. So though I recognize that some of these offenders have been in there for so long, I realized that several of them were failed by the legal justice system and they had not been served. My goals solidified after that internship and I knew what I wanted to do. As a young lawyer, I could play a defining role in changing their lives by providing legal counsel to those who could not afford it. I could improve the lives of men and women who had been born into these circumstances or wrongfully treated. I wanted to ensure fair judicial process. So, at the end of this, like I said, at the end of the internship, I realized what I wanted to do, and I found a way to continue my great-grandfather's legacy of serving those in need. So, as a result, to follow those footsteps, I enrolled in New York at the Law College, and it's a 3-year program. And during the semesters in between the program, I do an internship at a New York law firm. And there I have developed a real interest in real estate law, family law, and intellectual property. My great-grandfather was very successful in speculating the value of real estate property, especially considering he acquired real estate around the world in Singapore, Malaysia, and Bombay, realizing its potential even 50 years ago. So where am I at now? I will graduate next month, and my immediate task is to pass the US bar exam. My immediate plans after is to gain experience in practicing law, and my eventual goal is to come back here to India. And in that way, I can implement some of the grand plans that my great-grandfather had and that my father is continuing. I embrace all of you, and I encourage you to read this story that each of us are speaking about, the story of the life of my great-grandfather. And don't skip a page, because I'm confident that just like me, you too will be just as inspired by it. And together, we can continue his legacy and serve our community, family, and anyone in need. I know that my great-grandfather wanted to build a medical college, even as my sister mentioned. What I want to tell you is, I want to bring a law college to this educational institution, and that will be my contribution. And so as I stand here before you, I invite all of you to help us make this dream come true. Thank you for having all of us here today.
Thank you, ma'am, for your excellent speech. Thank you, eminent.
So happy. Tamil song for us.
காற்றென்ன காற்று ஒரு பூஞ்சோலை கேட்கின்றது மண்ணில் ஏன் 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 நீயும் வந்தாய் இந்த பெண்மை பூ பூக்கவே நான் பிறக்கும் முன்னே அட நீ பிறந்ததே நான் பிறக்கும் போது நீ உந்த கையில் என்னை ஏந்து தானோ உன்னோடு வாழாத வாழ்வென்ன வாழ்வு இன்னுள் நெஞ்ச சொல்கின்றது.
Okay? Thank you, ma'am.
What are you going to do? You're not going to become a lawyer just because I said. But,
I'm an IT student, ma'am.
okay, IT student, great. Very nice. All of you? Most of you? No? Throw out your...
All of reach and
Mathematics, ma'am.
Mathematics. You said mathematics also?
Yes, ma'am.
All of you so smart English. See, I look so small. I stay out with it. Yes, I'm 27.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Let's stay morning. What's your... Somebody told me their schedule. Even simple. You go to school, go home. Yeah, schedule. That's how you say it. In India and in the US, we say schedule. So then, what time you come to school? Like what time? I know you'll have lunch, but you have some tiffin like
Oh, ma'am.
அவங்க சும்மா போஸ்க்காக வச்சு சொன்னாங்க.
Ma'am, when is
Any, huh?
ma'am, when will the college will be?
When will the college? So I know that for the medical college, they've already been working towards it.
I'm asking the
But the law college, I think the law college can come sooner than the medical college. We're waiting for because yes, and you will be part of it too. And so yes, it's very possible. It will come soon. It's a matter, we'll have to find it where the campus will be, and it's a matter of getting professors, the teachers. So once the teachers come, it's very easy to put together a law school.
Within 3 years, ma'am?
Yes, this will happen.
We are waiting, ma'am.
So with what kind of general law that you can do? So general law meaning you can do anything. You can do crimes, simple crimes. Okay.
Ma'am, whether honors will come now? Honors will come here, the major.
I don't follow.
There are many major, no ma'am?
Yes.
Criminal, civil. I am asking whether honors will be here.
Honors?
MNC companies, they will having their